Hello, and welcome to The Road Already Traveled, a podcast where we feature lessons from successful entrepreneurs and the professionals that serve them as they share their inspiring stories and insights. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome back. I'm Rich Schuette, your host of The Road Already Traveled, where we share lessons from entrepreneurs, like-minded business owners, and the professionals that serve them, providing valuable insight to listeners that are on the same journey as we are. This episode is brought to you by Avalan, a wealth management firm dedicated to personalized financial, business, and investment planning. We work with select and like-minded entrepreneurs, providing guidance tailored to their specific and unique needs. From entrepreneurs just starting to see success to those preparing for exit, our team employs proven strategies to help them preserve and grow wealth, protect assets, maximize tax strategies, and plan for the intergenerational wealth transfer of their money and charitable giving along the way. Using our unique Optimal Entrepreneur Program and an unwavering focus on world-class service, our relationships are built to last generations, helping clients achieve lifelong goals through thoughtful and consultative approaches. To learn how Avalan can empower you to reach your goals, visit www.avalanwealth.com. And Avalan is all A's, A-V-A-L-A-N. Today, I'm welcoming back Chad Franzen. If you remember, he's with Rise 25 and has done thousands of interviews with successful entrepreneurs and CEOs. And once again, we're going to flip the script today, and Chad's going to be interviewing me. So, Chad, welcome back to the show, and welcome. Yeah, take it away.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rich. Looking forward to talking to you. Hey, let's get into what makes Avalan different, maybe than others who say they do the same things as you. What do you do maybe that others don't do?
So, it's difficult to distinguish, to especially a layperson or a consumer of, the financial services world and products. But I would say probably the biggest thing that makes us different from the vast majority of our competitors is that we, just like those we serve, are entrepreneurs, right? This firm was founded by myself and, has grown along the way with bringing in other like-minded people that have worked for themselves, run their own businesses, and have faced the same challenges of the people that we serve. And at the end of the day, that's why we're really doing this podcast, right? Is because, I've had these stories, these experiences, and they're fascinating to listen to and to be able to serve. And, I guess that ties into then something else that I think that makes us different as well, is that we are genuinely a curious firm, right? We want to learn everything that there is to learn. We want to hear stories, and we want to take these journeys with our clients. We're there at the center of that journey, and not potentially a lineup of products or services that we're trying to chase down.
So you mentioned that you have other entrepreneurs working with you and for you. They kind of make up maybe some teams that you have. Tell me about those teams and their expertise.
Yeah, Chad, thanks for asking. So, aside from those that are actually in-house that are working with us, right? My business partner and a couple of our advisors that have run these businesses, we've also created something that's fairly unique, in the financial services industry, in the wealth management business, where we've created what we essentially refer to as our expert teams that allow us to provide what we have kind of labeled as the optimal entrepreneur's experience, right? And to give entrepreneurs the feeling of a family office, right? Even though many of them have not reached the levels of wealth that could afford them that kind of service. And in doing so, we've created these teams that are made up of other professionals that serve the same client, that work with entrepreneurs, their insides and outs. Those teams are made up of people that range anywhere from CPAs, right? Not the folks that are just pushing pencils, but the people that have founded their own firms and built firms around these services, to those professionals that are providing benefits to our clients, actuaries, health insurance brokerages, property and casualty insurance, which is so important, right, in terms of protecting wealth. maybe some of the lesser entrepreneurs themselves, but those that definitely serve them are bankers that sit on this expert team, and all the way down to business valuation experts, business transaction attorneys, and those again, those types of people, depending on the client. What we've done is we've brought that team together, where we sit down with each and every client and present that client to this team in a collaborative way, as essentially a case study. And of course, all the names are changed to protect the innocent. And these teams serve us to better serve our client. These aren't people that we've put together because we're looking to be able to establish, some quid pro quo where we refer to them and they refer to us. These are professionals that are literally sitting on this team of experts with zero expectations other than being able to broaden their horizons and knowledge base by going through these studies. And what's really cool about that is that as we go through these case studies, if you will, these live, real life case studies, we're doing it in a way where everything is coming together, where it dovetails together. So what you don't have is, for example, a CPA coming up with this amazing tax strategy that just blew up everything that the estate planning attorney did for, an intergenerational wealth transfer, or is completely not taken into consideration what the client's been doing with their charitable intent, if they have some. And so this fact pattern is coming forward to the table as a whole, and the ideas that are generated from this are coming out in a comprehensive package that allows our clients then to move forward, right, with slices of their time and in order of importance, to being able to put together a genuine plan that's working specifically for that client, right? So we'll take the top 2 or 3 ideas that come out of that meeting in terms of like not just the validity of the idea, but the timeliness and need of that idea. And then we'll start to break those out, right? And then we'll work through those as the relationship with the client continues. So, we'll spend a little bit of time working on, the first 3 things, and as one gets completed and drops off the list, we'll add the next most important. And it creates a situation where these clients are constantly, in a comfortable, right, and pressured groove to be able to start to implement those strategies. And the strategies are really important. We'll come back to that, I hope, later in the interview.
Yeah, I'm sure most people probably feel the most comfortable if their advisor comes from a firm, like a big name firm, maybe a mainstream firm, something like that. What are your thoughts on that attitude, that notion?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because when you really sit back and look at the structure of our industry, business is business, right? And there's not a single business owner listening to this that doesn't understand that, right? We do what we do. It's not out of our own generosity of our heart and charitable intent to just move along. We're all here to make a dime and move what we do forward. But who are we serving in that scenario, right? I think if any of you had listened to the previous episode where we had talked about some of my background, when I got out of college and started to, look at our industry because I wanted to enter it, and when I started to look at what it was, I talked to all the big firms, right? And I understood in that moment as a 22-year-old kid, really what the game was, right? I wasn't being hired as a financial advisor or as a wealth manager or as a professional. They were looking for salespeople. And they were looking for salespeople to serve the company, and damn the torpedoes in terms of whether or not they're actually serving the client well. And honestly, the bigger the firm, the more people that are out there, the more that you have, right? You have quotas, you have expectations, you have to close business. A lot of these larger firms will have proprietary products or other products that aren't proprietary where there's a particular spoof, or I should say spiff, in selling that product, right? They're actually compensated differently for different solutions that they're putting in place. And so you have to ask yourself, right, with some of these larger firms, it's like, are you the client or is their firm the client? And so, and that's not to discredit the larger firms because they serve a great purpose, right? And for an average type of, investor out there, they have good investment strategies, right? But when we get into the world of entrepreneurs, what I've learned from my own self and my own journey, as well as those that I've worked with, is that we we're pretty much all smart enough to be able to build, a portfolio that's not going to blow us up, right?
Mm.
We can go click the button on Vanguard and understand how to put together a portfolio mostly that's not going to hurt us. We don't need somebody to be giving us investment advice per se, right? Now, by the way, emotions get in the way of all that, and so any good professional is going to help, right? Kind of guide us away from our own stupidity, and keep us away from sharp objects. But for the most part, what we need is somebody who's dedicated to our vision, our goal, and where we're going, right? Somebody that understands what money means to us as the client, and not what it means to us as the firm. So while there are good reasons for a lesser sophisticated client, with fewer moving parts to be working with those types of solutions, when it comes to entrepreneurs, our life is it's nuts, right? We've got 17 plates in the air and we're trying to keep them all balanced while we're, behind our backs, we're juggling 16 other balls. And it's a lot, right? And so, I've learned that we really need, somebody that's going to kind of tie that all together and put a bow on it. And that's the idea of the expert team. And that's what I meant by what makes us different in the beginning is that, we are entrepreneurs, right, that are working for entrepreneurs. We've walked in the shoes. We understand the journey.
So given everything that you've said now, let's say, I'm working with a current advisor or I'm considering a new advisor. And you've just told me a few things, some potential things that could happen with maybe a big name or something like that. What are some things that I should take into consideration?
So yeah, I think it really comes down to it's as simple as three things, right? In terms of what you should be, the standards you should be holding to your current advisor if you're working with them, and definitely if you're looking for somebody different or if you're looking for somebody for the first time, understanding these three components, are genuinely the most important things there are, right? And I would say that that's integrity, that's competence, and that's experience. And those three things together basically, encompass all the other things that we should be looking for, from these advisors that we're working with.
So integrity, how do I measure that?
I think some of that goes back to the first question that I had asked, or that I should say that I had answered. Remember, we flipped the script. Um, um, Integrity is pretty broad reaching, right? It's we all have our gut instinct that we work with, right? We'll meet somebody and we'll say, hey, I like that person. They're a good person. Or, we might walk away going, I didn't have a great feeling about that. And that's probably, one of the first areas you can kind of look to, right, in terms of establishing integrity. What's your gut tell you? Because more often than not, your gut's right, correct? Um, with the exception of investing, we tend to invest too much with our guts and not enough with our brain, right? We make it more intestinal than intellectual. But I think that's kind of your first piece. But then you can kind of start to look at other things, right? And so I talked about this earlier in terms of who is this person serving, right? Ask the questions. Be curious. I tell my kids all the time, right? Ask why and ask it over and over and over. And if the whys don't add up, then the quickest way to understanding where someone is going with something is then follow the money, right? And so you need to ask yourself, is like, who is this person working for? Are they working for me? Are they working for their firm? Are they working for, a gigantic, publicly traded company, right? Are they independent? How are they being paid? Right? Is there a conflict in their compensation? Are they being paid directly by you, or are they being paid by their employer? Are they being paid by special commission structures for particular products that they're being encouraged? Are they recommending stocks because their firm might be holding, a huge inventory of those stocks and looking to, start to put some of those back out to the clients and get them off of their shelves? Which, by the way, firms do that, right? They're one of the biggest traders out there, and they have inventories that they build of product. And as they look for liquidity or to move into other products, they need to start to sell that inventory. And what's the easiest way to do that? Well, you incentivize your workforce with greater compensation for selling a particular position or a particular product. So understand that. understand what their level of engagement is. Um, there are basically two kinds of advisors out there, right? There are those that are held to a fiduciary standard and those that aren't, right? That word's used a lot. And in the independent world, it's overused because the independents tend to have a fiduciary obligation, but oftentimes don't hold to it. So just simply being a fiduciary doesn't mean that you are a fiduciary, right? But understand that, right? Are you falling under the know your client rule, which is the typical, brokerage rule, right? So like, hey, you're 50 years old and you're aggressive, and so you fit into this, and I can sell you all the things that go along with that, right? Or, um, as a fiduciary that's only being paid by the client, not being paid by providers, not being paid by product, right? That gives them a little bit easier start, right, in terms of being able to act in that fiduciary capacity. So understand that, right? That's an important part of integrity too. Um, I know there are a lot of ways to look at it, and like I said, when we're dealing with our money, um, we don't want to think about it, right? We're too busy creating that money through our ventures, right? Through what we've created in our businesses. And so, oftentimes when an entrepreneur shells that responsibility off, they're doing it just from that initial gut feeling and not looking at the rest of it. And then moving down the road, not really understanding how that relationship works and what the service is being provided to them.
Besides integrity, another element that you mentioned that should be considered is competence. What can you tell me about competence?
Well, I think oftentimes, I'm going to try and loop competence and experience together. Um, we competence is at the very least, right? Table stakes, right? You're looking for somebody who's competent in what they do. I have a friend that works with an advisor that had made an off the cuff comment to them recently over lunch, where they were discussing, the ins and outs of financial services and what they're doing, and my friend is not a math wizard. They're in a business where there is no math. And so they're saying, well, I don't know how you do all you do. There's like so much math. And it's like, you got to have a really special mindset to that. And this advisor came back and said, hey, I hate math. I'm not good at math, but this isn't a math business. This is a people business. Our job is to earn the trust of people. But, this is where I'd go back to that concept of not just competence, but experience. It's like if you don't have the basic skill sets, right, to be providing the answers that our clients are so in need of, right? And if you're just sitting there, creating a relationship so you can kind of turn that person over to some behind the scenes person, I would argue that's not competence, right? Now, on the flip side, there are a lot of people that are quite competent, in our industry. I mean, I'm surrounded by some amazing people that are in many levels, so much smarter than I am. And in many levels not. But intelligence doesn't equal competence, right? So as you're looking at things, what do you understand? And I'm gonna go through a couple of ideas here real quick in terms of the things that we talk about, with our clients. Some of the biggest needle movers, that a business owner ultimately has to creating wealth, right? Not just returns. And I'm gonna contrast competence with experience. Okay. And I think that the listener is going to be blown away when I share some of this. If you look at the lowest hanging fruit, right, in terms of where you can start to make really significant differences in a business owner's life, right, is through careful, thoughtful, and advanced planning around their retirement plan. Right. It's aside from being one of the most tax efficient ways that they can put some money aside, it's also one of the greatest tools that they have in terms of taking money off the table, right, and de-risking a little bit from their business while not having to go too far. Actually, in many cases, having the federal government pay for almost half of that de-risking, right, through the tax advantages. And so, aside from our standard 401ks that most employers look at, just simply as an employee benefit, and then don't do much for themselves because in those traditional plans, there's not a lot of room over that what you can do there. You can't put a ton of money away in those situations. And by the time you start to, it starts to get really expensive. So there's something basically called defined benefit plans. These are like the pensions, right? That the great generation had, and many of the boomers, right? In terms of, you work someplace for forever, and when you're done, you retire out at X amount of your salary and then you get that income permanently. Well, business owner can create that for themselves, right? Through what's called the defined benefit plan. And it is truly incredibly powerful. It's a way for a business owner to be able to put away, into the six figures, significantly into the six figures for themselves in a tax deductible way, right, for the future. Incredibly powerful, right? So here we'll go back to, I'm getting long-winded here, but we'll kind of go back to that in that sample, the difference between competence and experience. There was a study that was put out by AES Nation probably about 15 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago, where there were hundreds of advisors that were surveyed, right? In terms of, hey, here are a bunch of things, that business owners need to know about. Talk to me. You said you work with business owners. Tell me what you know of these things, right? So we'll use defined benefits. And in that survey, just over 3/4 of the respondents to the survey said, oh, yeah. We know about that, right? Cool. That's competence. Well, would you believe that of all of those advisors that were actually asked the question, the follow-up question, have you provided this to a client? 8.8%. That's experience, right? There's a vast difference between what you know in the books and what you can actually provide, right, in real life. Same thing goes on with other really powerful tools for business owners, right? Captive insurance is in many cases an incredible game changer, right? Not just in terms of what it costs to be able to, protect your assets, but also in terms of getting great tax advantage in doing so. Same questions, right? Are you knowledgeable about? Have you provided? In that case, only about half of the advisors that were asked knew about captive insurance companies. Do you know how many actually have ever done one for a client? 1.6%. Right?
Wow.
Private placement life insurance. Life insurance gets a really bad rap, right? Because, that's the epitome of where, you have a commission-driven product, right? Where these life insurance agents can, go out and put in large numbers of life insurance and literally, in some cases, make seven figures of commission on these products. Nobody talks about private placement insurance because it doesn't work with commission. Shocker, right? It's crazy it doesn't get talked about. Do you know about private placement life insurance? Well, just over a third of the advisors had heard of that. And it's the same answer, right? Less than 3% of them have actually ever done it. Again, competence versus experience, right? And I can go on and on about this, in terms of looking at things like, non-qualified deferred compensation, private foundations or donor advised funds. These are all things that are exponentially useful, right, to a business owner and to somebody who's accumulated wealth. And again, you've got, in most cases, roughly half, right, of the advisor pool that has the experience. And then again, from those examples I gave you, in almost every situation of every one of those products, less than 10% of them that have ever done it.
So there are a lot of questions that can be raised about potential integrity of an advisor, but then how do you going into a relationship with a new advisor or even with your current advisor, how can a client or somebody who needs help with an advisor differentiate competence from experience? Hey, do you know about this? Oh yeah, we help people with this, but they do it like 2% of the time, or else they don't do it at all.
I think that's really, excuse me. I think that's really where it becomes critical to get curious, right? Like I'd mentioned about, and what this entire podcast is about, right? It's about getting curious. We aren't reluctant to ask questions. We'll ask the questions that we think that we're supposed to ask that make us look smart. But we have less of a tendency to be able to ask the questions that make us a little bit vulnerable, right? But I don't see anything wrong with asking the questions, right? About give me some examples, of what you've done, right? In the advanced planning side of working with business owners and entrepreneurs like myself, right? Let me talk to a couple of your clients, right? Let me hear from them, what that experience has been like and how you've provided it, right? We'll ask for a reference all the time, right? But we'll never ask for a reference in the sense of like, and then we'll call the reference like, hey, is Joe a good guy? And they're like, oh yeah, I love Joe, he's great. And it's like, great, thanks. And you hang up the phone. But we don't have a tendency to ask like, what's Joe done for you, right? What has he done that's moved your needle, right? Where has he earned his compensation, right? Aside from building a portfolio, right? Because that's the table stakes piece of it, right? It's like what people don't understand, Chad, is that, and especially entrepreneurs, I'll tell you that right now, because we're all driven the same way, right? We want results. Give me results, right? What are your returns? That's the first question everyone ever wants to ask. What are your returns? It's like, well, that's a loaded question, right? What are your goals? What are your objectives, right? I mean, our returns range from here all the way out that way, right? Beyond what you can even see with a scope. And what are your returns? Like, well, it's an easy question and it's a hard question, but it's really table stakes, right? If you're a good advisor, if you're a competent advisor with integrity, those returns are going to be all fairly similar, right? Within professionals, right? You're working in the same marketplace, and someone might have a little bit of a nuance here, or a little bit of a nuance there, or something different, that might supplement it. But by and large, for the most part, it is the simplest thing that we do and the biggest thing that we talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But where our worth comes in, right? Where we earn our money is it's not what you made, but it's how much have you kept, right? Ask these people that you're asking references for, what'd you pay in taxes last year, right? On your portfolio, right? Was it a lot? Was it a little? Do you even know? Was it talked about, right? Ask them what is the single biggest thing that your advisor did for you, right? That put money in your pocket, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was it talking about a piece of property that you owned and how you can accelerate depreciation on it? Or was it putting life insurance in place to where the money's actually working for you and not for the life insurance company? Is it setting up a retirement plan where you literally just put away $270,000 and kept 90% of that for yourself, right? And only had to give 10% of it away to your staff? Did they do that for you? What was that like? Tell me about it. What are some of the things that they've done? How have they put money in your pocket?
So, integrity, competence, and experience, that can kind of break an advisor down into three different types or categories. Tell me about those three types and how we can differentiate those.
Well, in my experience, right, in over 25 years of doing this, I've seen a lot of advisors, right? I've had a lot of clients that have come from other advisors that have been great and some that haven't. Um, I've known a lot of advisors, and by and large, they're all excellent people, and very bright. But the three that I really see in terms of a theme as we go through this, and I look at it, it's really you're either a professional, which is what we're all looking for. You're a pretender, right? Which many times is what we get, or you're a predator. It's kind of the three P's of advisors. And the predators are obviously the most dangerous and sometimes the most difficult to spot, right? But those are the ones that will usually lead with a specific answer before they ever ask the question, right? They've got a specific solution, never knowing if it's one that you need, but it's got the right talking points. Because we all want to save on taxes and we all want to do this and we all want to do that. And so, that's usually how you can find those predators. And oftentimes you'll see those predators in the headlines, right? So most people see really only one of the, or two of the three, I should say, right? The professionals or the pretenders. And that's really difficult to tell the difference. Warren Buffett had a quote years and years ago, and I thought it was maybe one of the best ones I'd ever heard, and related to our industry. He said, Wall Street is the only place that you can go to a meeting with your chauffeur in your limousine to walk into the building and get advice from someone who took the subway to work. And it's really profound, right? And that's really that difference between, professional and pretender. Who's walked the walk, right? You can understand that it's a people business. You can understand that you don't have to do the math. You can understand that there's someone back there that'll do all that for you. Those aren't the people with the relationship with the client, right? Does that make you a professional? I don't know. That becomes a very nuanced question, and kind of comes back to what we talked about initially with the idea of people wanting to work with big firms, right, versus not. Professionals are going to be the ones that have that combination, right, of the integrity, of the competence, and of the experience, right? Mm-hmm. And it's our job as consumers when we're working with. This is the single most important thing that we have, right? Is the wealth that we've created, accumulated, the things we want to do with it. But it's the one place that we rely more on just simple trust or gut feeling than we do on actually asking questions, right? Mm-hmm. We won't ask the hard questions to that person that's selling us, but we have no problem in our own industry where we understand everything around us, grilling the hell out of people, right? But as soon as we're a little bit out of our comfort zone, we don't want to admit that we are. We don't want to have somebody think that we need them, right? And something as simple as like, it's just my investment account, right? I can figure that out. Or, yeah, I trust this person, right? It's like, that's enough. We don't ask those hard questions, right? And I don't know if it's because we're embarrassed to ask them, or if we're just, if our egos get in the way. I'm really not sure what it is, but this is the place that it doesn't matter more anywhere, right, than to ask those hard questions. How do you work with a client? Kind of goes back to that expert team idea, right? It's like, what's the difference between having a CPA, that you can refer me to, or the difference of having a CPA that's actually working with you collaboratively with all these other professionals, right, to provide genuine ideas for me that I can bring back to my own professionals, right? These people that are on our teams, they don't work for us. They don't work for our clients, right? They work with us, right? They're doing it for that same reason that we're doing it. They're curious. They want to be able to learn more. They want to see more types of things where they can actually. Every time I put one of these teams together, none of the professionals can believe that it's like, why doesn't everyone do this, right? Like, this is like one of the most incredible things. They do it for free, right? Mm-hmm. They want to sit at that table because they're being exposed to things that they never hear in their own niche, right? They're being exposed to live, real time, real client case studies. Of course, the names being removed to protect or changed to protect the innocent. But I mean, they're sitting down, together, looking at our clients' real life situations, where the CPA can say, "Hey, this is a great idea," and the estate planning attorney can say, "No, you can't do that because we did something like this over here, and if you do that, it's going to blow this up, or it's not going to work." Right? How often does the CPA have the ability to actually have the other professionals sitting there telling like, "That's a great idea, and that works in a lot of cases, but not in this one"? Right? What happens if they're not sitting there together? Right. And the CPA still does that, and no one figures it out until it's too late. Right. It's that interdynamic, that talking, amongst these professionals. And this is going to be the coolest thing, Chad, about what we do as this series progresses. Right. We're going to have these professionals come in and talk about some of these topics that I brought up earlier. Right. The people that are driving these ideas and helping us implement them, we're going to have them talk about these strategies and talk about, what they can do, to make it different, right, for our clients as we work together, versus instead of both of us sitting there with our hands out, it's like, hey, I'll send you someone, maybe you'll send me someone, and I don't even know if you can get the job done, type of a thing, right? And it's it's going to be a great ride. And, for those that keep tuning in and subscribing, and all the places you can subscribe to your podcast for the road already traveled, you're going to learn a lot, right? Again, not just the lessons from the entrepreneurs, but again, when we talk about it being the people that serve them, it's going to be a great place for you to be able to educate yourself on some of the things that are out there and some of the things that will naturally through the course of this podcast elaborate more so on the questions I've been answering for you today.
Sounds great, Rich. I will definitely look forward to tuning in. As we wrap things up here, any just final thoughts on what makes Avalan different?
Boy, if that doesn't set us apart, I'm not sure I'll ever be able to do it. Again, like I said, when you have a group of people that are walking in the shoes of entrepreneurs that are serving the entrepreneurs and not somebody, as Warren Buffett said, took the subway to work, who's never owned a business or had to look at a P&L, that are only looking at commission structures and bonuses and things that they need to do in terms of quotas. I think that in and of itself, aside from all those other things we talked about, really does set us apart, right? Where we really are looking at the whole entrepreneur.
Okay, awesome. Hey, Rich, it's been great to talk to you. Thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah, I appreciate you getting some of this out of me. It's hard to talk about yourself sometimes. So I'm looking forward to when we start getting into some of the episodes, we're going to talk to some of the other folks too.
So long, everybody.
As always, thanks for joining us on the Road Already Traveled podcast. We're grateful you've joined our community and look forward to seeing you again for our next installment. So be sure to click subscribe so you won't miss a thing. This communication is for informational purposes only and does not purport to be a complete statement of all material facts related to any company, industry, or security mentioned. This material is limited to the dissemination of general information pertaining to its diversified services. The opinions expressed reflect our judgment now and are subject to change without notice and may or may not be updated. The information provided, while not guaranteed as to accuracy or completeness, has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable. Financial planning, advisory, and/or consulting services offered through Avalan LLC, a registered investment advisor. Prospects or clients who take advantage of any free consultations or services are under no obligation to hire Avalan LLC as their investment advisor. Listeners who are not market professionals or institutional clients of Avalan LLC should seek the advice of their financial advisor before making any investment decisions based on this communication. Additional information on any securities mentioned is available on request.